My name is Janice. I'm with Morgan's Caring Connection, and today in our empowerment session, we have Rebecca. I knew I was going to do this. Unverzagt. Unverzagt. Wait, no, that's not right either. Try. Okay. And I'm German, so I should know this. Shouldn't be that difficult. I get tongue twisted every time. So on that note, we're covering savings for the future today. She's the branch manager of Old National Bank in Mount Horeb, also a member of Morgan's Caring Connections board, and we're super excited to have her here today. So without further ado, Rebecca, let's get started, and I'll give you a second to go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate you for having me today, Janice. Super excited to be a part of this. I am an individual who lives with disabilities, and while I am more independent, I am very passionate about making sure that others have a voice and that they can be as successful as they can be. So really happy to help in any way I can and to be a part of Morgan's Caring Connection. I think we've done a lot of really great things so far. So really happy to be here today.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. So on the topic of savings for the future, so the first question really is, why is savings an important consideration for families with disabled dependents?
I think mainly because of the added expenditure, right? So living with or caring for an individual with a disability is expensive. The National Disability Institute estimates the average extra cost and extra expense at about $20,000 a year. Wow. And that's an average, right?
Sure.
So, we know that a more independent individual, it might be a little bit less. Maybe they can work and they have a small part-time job or something to that effect. But we also know that cost could be much more than that per year, depending on how much support and home care and things that a family might need. So being able to save up anything that you can for those extra costs is going to be very important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. It's so interesting. A lot of us live in the day-to-day and we forget that all this stuff really does add up. Although we do have a lot of other means that do help offset those expenses, there are still a considerable amount of them that are not covered in any way, shape, or form. So how can families plan to save money for their goals?
My best advice would be to partner with the financial professionals that you know. So partner with your banker, with your financial planner if you have one. Let them know that what your situation is. Let them know what your goals are. They are the professionals for a reason, right? They know what products and services that they have and what might help you get there. I think a lot of individuals maybe don't understand that financial planning is something that we can all use, whether we have $100 in a savings account or $100,000 in a savings account. Those resources and that understanding of how we can build our wealth and build our savings accounts are really, that comes from experience, and those professionals are going to be able to use their experience to make suggestions for your unique situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. That's something that we talk about at MCC all the time, as being proactive. But let's just be honest too, when we sit down with professionals, it's a vulnerable thing. Not only that, let's just be honest, a lot of us don't even think to mention it. You know what I mean? Like it's not a normal course of a conversation. And hey, by the way, I have a special needs dependent, and how can you help me with that? It's just, yeah. So it is on both sides, where sometimes I also push that back on the professionals and say, I feel like it's our responsibility as professionals in our industry to bring that up proactively with families and say, hey, by the way, do you have anybody that you're caring for with special needs? And then just start to uncover it, not just assume that all dependents are not of special needs, right? Like, I feel like that's super important too. And I feel that that's part of our advocacy, that we need to help educate people on both sides, to be proactive, and don't be afraid to ask. At the same token, for families, don't be afraid to ask the professional, right? So, kind of talking about that, we all, like I said, have unexpected expenses. Are there ways that we can prepare for unexpected expenses?
I think a really great tactic that families can use is to have a separate savings account. Many individuals have your checking and your savings, and everything is together. So we're saving for our, the fun stuff. We're saving for our vacation, and we're going to buy a new car, and, all the fun things that we get excited about. But that's also lumped in with the unexpected, the car that, the car breaks down, or, for a special needs dependent, we need a new mobility device, or we need to have adjustments made to the car to make room for that device, etc. Those things that we might not be prepared for. So I think having a separate account that you don't loop in with your other savings funds is really important, so that you're not using those funds for anything else other than true emergency and unexpected situations.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Again, not something that I think every family stops to think about. And so are there any other strategies that we could use to save money?
Biggest suggestion is automate your savings. Automate. People are busy. Now, I think more than ever, we're busy. We have so many things going on, and I think that's even more true when you have a special needs dependent. You've got appointments to get to, you've got medications to track, you've got all of these things going on. So the room that's left in your brain to track how much am I supposed to be saving this month, there's probably not a whole lot of room left in your attention span at the end of the day.
Right.
Most financial institutions have some really incredible tools to help you with setting aside money in that way, where you can budget your savings without even having to think about it. Sure. For example, having an automatic transfer, most of the time you can set that up right through your online banking or your mobile banking. Set up an automatic every payday, every 2 weeks, however you get paid, whether it's bi-monthly, weekly, and have it go, set it and forget it. Have it go every month, have it go every paycheck, however it is it works for your budget. And you have that peace of mind that it's going to be saved. It's already set aside, so you're not going to accidentally spend it on something. And you also don't have to think about doing it. It's one less task that you're going to have to do every single time. So automation is, I think, really, really helpful for things like that. Set it and forget it.
Right. Absolutely. No, great point. I didn't even, nobody's even said that to us in all the years that we've been doing banking. I always thought it was like on the payroll side, up to them to designate funds. Because I know that you can do that with direct deposit, but the reality is that how much control then do you have? Whereas at our level, working with the bank directly in our own accounts directly, we would have more control over things like that. So again, awesome point. I appreciate you making that point for people to consider that. Are there other strategies that we could use maybe to reduce expenses?
Yeah, I think really take a detailed look at your spending and find where you can be reducing or cutting costs. I would recommend, go through, let's say 3 months worth of spending. Maybe don't go through your spending during the holidays, right? Because we know that your holiday spending is probably going to look a little different. But go through about 3 months of just your normal, everyday, regular spending and identify the transactions and match them to, kind of the categories in your budget. So these are my food expenses. These are my medical expenses, my transportation, etc. And once you've kind of identified all of these different transactions, you can see what categories are we, in line with our budget. What categories are we maybe spending a lot more in? Entertainment tends to be one where we spend a lot more than we realize, especially with all of those recurring streaming services and all of these things that you sign up for the free trial and then you forget about it. And there's an extra $5 per month that you don't know about. Well, that stuff adds up.
Yeah, absolutely. The big one, Amazon. Amazon's a huge one because they make it so easy. So when we sat down and figured out our budget, we were like, oh my gosh, we had no idea that we were spending that much every month. And then the other one was, simply ordering food, the easy DoorDash or this, that, and the other, going out for food. And we cut down on that significantly. But the big thing is, like you said, you need to be aware of it first.
Yep.
I think that's the biggest problem, is that because things have become so automated, the days of actually physically balancing a checkbook are gone, and therefore it makes it so much easier to spend in a way that isn't good, because it's out of sight, out of mind. And so that's a great point. Maybe that, as a family, just even considering doing that every 3 months, sitting down and going, okay, and that also maybe will bring up things that have changed. And so I really like that idea. If you can't do it quarterly, maybe even semi-annually or just even yearly. I don't know how many families ever sit down to do something like that. So I really love that idea.
Yeah, and there's a lot of tools that you can track your, like once you've done that, you can then track your spending. There's plenty, a lot of, I can speak, I know Old National has a money management section on our online banking where you can track your spending and categorize your transactions to kind of align with your budget. Many financial institutions have something similar. And there's a ton of independent apps that you can just input the transactions so you can track it. And I agree with you. I think awareness is the biggest part of it. The more aware you are of your spending, the easier it's going to be to recognize when you're going a little bit over in a category, and you can shift in the moment rather than towards the end of the month when you're worrying about how am I going to make ends meet here, or wondering why your savings isn't where you're wanting it to be.
Sure. Let's talk about savings for a minute. There's a lot of families that have dependents on SSI or SSDI, and there are so many rules and so many things that we have to worry about. So savings does become one of those things that could potentially be a red flag, or, for better words, detrimental to something like funding. So how can we save in a way that it won't affect our public benefit programs?
Right. And I think, it does vary depending on the program. So I think the first thing, I'll again speak of awareness. Some programs do have asset limitations, which, affect how much an individual can have in a certain checking or savings account, or overall assets as a whole. So I think really knowing what the conditions and the eligibility requirements are of any of the benefit programs that you might be participating in is going to be a key. But then also knowing what other special accounts are out there, continuing to save without that reduction. I think there are plenty of options where you have accounts that are specifically designed to help individuals with disability save without having that effect to the eligibility, and that have some of those tax benefits.
And that's typically done with a financial advisor, if I understand correctly. So yeah, so if it comes down to wanting to save and not jeopardizing your funding or your benefits, that's the next step, is to talk to somebody to make sure that those avenues are pursued. Are there anything, is there anything else on how families can continue to save without risking a reduction in benefits?
Yeah, I think, again, trusting those professionals. So you bring up your financial advisors. They're going to be very aware of those things. I think your tax planners are also going to be, your tax advisors are going to be very aware of the tax laws and how that's going to come into account. They may be able to speak to the very specific, so an account that may be able to be separate from that. So I think trust your the professionals in your life. And to your point earlier, it is going to be up to them to be asking those questions. They need to be knowledgeable. But when you are in those programs, those are all things that you're going to have specific forms that you have to file and things like that. So they should be able to see those and be able to make those recommendations. So I think it's up to them to give you the best advice that they can and have your best interest at heart. And it's up to you to make sure you're asking those questions. How can I make sure that I'm setting up my dependent for, a successful life? How can I make sure that I'm saving for these unexpected costs, or, these goals that we have for them in a way that's not going to jeopardize the benefits that we're already getting?
Yeah, good point. Are there any special accounts that families should be aware of?
Yeah, I think one that comes to mind, there is something called an ABLE account. And an ABLE account is a tax advantaged account that allows people with disabilities to save and invest without affecting most of their federal and state benefits. They are state administered, so it does vary from state to state. And the nice thing about them is that anyone can contribute to them. So it's an account that it is in the name, for the most part, in the name of the individual with the disabilities, and friends can contribute to it, family members can contribute to it. So it is a way that you can save and get those additional benefits without impacting those. So that is an account to look into and to ask your tax professional about how it's similar to like a 529 account.
Okay.
So it's another account that you could talk about potentially setting up that may have some of those additional benefits, depending on the state you live in and how they administer it and what their specific regulations are.
Got it. That makes sense. Is there anything else that you think would be important for families that are, looking into this particular topic around savings for the future? Anything else that you have recommendation on that I didn't think of today?
I think, I agree with you that it's a vulnerable place. It is. It's difficult for anyone to talk about their financials with someone that you don't know. So I think find someone that you trust. Find someone that you feel comfortable with, and, don't be afraid to ask for help. I think the sooner that you look for that network of individuals who, has your best interest at heart, the better off you're going to be. And I think that's where, I really connect with Morgan's Caring Connection, with our mission and our network of professionals, that these are all individuals that we know are going to have a family's best interest at heart, and they're going to make those recommendations to try to do the very best that we can for families. So I think my last recommendation would be, to use those resources, because I think that we really do have some great individuals across all different types of industries that are going to be here for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, along those lines, in the event that somebody wanted to get more information or reach out to you directly, is there the ability to do something virtual, or do they have to come to your location?
We can do something virtual. There are certain situations in which I do need to obtain signatures and things like that, but an initial discussion and things like that, I can also try to come to a location that's closer if that's something that's easier. I know Mount Horeb is not exactly the closest to everyone, so we can work together also with bankers in the area in order to get those document signs and things like that. But we can certainly do appointments over the phone or via a Teams meeting if that is going to be easier for families.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I just wanted to bring that up because a lot of people don't have the ability to leave their homes on a regular basis, and sometimes an initial conversation or anything that doesn't require something where there'd be a signature or documents needing to be done in person, it's nice for them to know that they have the ability to do something virtually until that time comes. So we do appreciate you offering that up to people. And of course, if anybody needs to reach out to anyone in our professional network or to you specifically regarding anything to do with banking, we highly recommend that they visit our website at www.morganscc.org. And again, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to doing more sessions with you in the future where we can talk about other topics that might help families. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Have a good day.